Hello, my name is James Bowden, and I want to thank you for tuning into this video. First, allow me to somewhat apologize for my attire. I am in a period of great personal transition, and so I'm not able to access some of the other things that I normally would. However, there might also be some method in this madness. And I'm also producing this video almost stream of consciousness. So forgive me if there are a couple of pauses because I'm still processing some of these thoughts and ideas. But I wanted to give my immediate take on something. And that is Israel's picking a war, picking a fight with Syria. As I stated in a previous post, since I was able to reconnect with monitoring the Middle East in early 2019, there were a lot of observations on my part that Israel was bombing Syria. They were doing this maybe once every 2 to 3 weeks, definitely once per month. And Israel continued to try to deny that they were behind the strikes, yet it was very patently obvious that it was them. They were attacking these various positions, which were obviously Hezbollah and or Iranian controlled warehouses and distribution points or means of distribution, maybe taking out trucks or tractor trailers, so on and so forth. So there was a steady tempo, but it was a tempo which allowed Syria to save face, and it was a tempo at which Syria could absorb, especially given that they were still within the larger effects of the civil war and very dependent upon Russian forces. So they had to kind of accept it to a limit. But I believe that Israel right now is beginning to test those limits of Syrian resistance and capability to absorb them without losing face and without losing credibility. So Israel has been attacking Syria in a very specific way for the last week, almost emerging now. Well, yeah, week and a half, where I have seen at least either every other day or every day some type of artillery round, tank round, bombing, or now even assassination of this businessman who was a close personal associate of Bashar al-Assad. How much Israel can push Syria around. Also, we had the bombing of the Iranian embassy in Damascus. That was a further embarrassment also to Syria because host nations are required by international law to be responsible for the security and the safety of foreign embassies, and Syria was not able to accomplish that. And who knows what kind of embarrassment and diplomatic pressure resulted from the inability of the Syrians to do that. So there is a lot riding on Syria's response. Now, Syria is largely recovering or recovered from the civil war, and most of the towns and cities that are in a status of continual rebellion are up in the north and places like Aleppo. The Damascus region has been secured, and Bashar al-Assad has a core area from which he can derive a military response. But what is even more troubling is this. I'm not sure that Israel is really calculating the risk because we know that in the past, especially 2014 through 2015 or 16, Syria and Hezbollah were cooperating together. Syria called in Hezbollah to help them deal with the ISIS threat. That gave Hezbollah serious, on the ground, real world training against an adversary. It gave the Syrians and Hezbollah the ability to coordinate and have military to military interactions. And they are now familiar with each other, with tactics. This integration is kind of like what you might expect from nation state to nation state if they're doing drills or if they go to war together. They have an increased network compatibility, which enables them to more easily adapt to challenges as well as go to war against an adversary. And what Israel may not be counting on, or maybe they're counting on it, is that Hezbollah might feel much more comfortable going to war with Israel if they know and they get a call from Bashar al-Assad and says, "Hey, look, we're getting our forces stood up and we're going to attack. We're going to attack through the Golan Heights. Go ahead. Let's go ahead and declare a general war against Israel." And in that moment, we will have a war in Gaza. We will have it's like a upside down insurgency in the West Bank. Israel is fighting the Palestinians in the West Bank. They're using law enforcement slash military, and there's a very thin marginal difference between the two in Israel, between the police and the military. And then you add this northern front for which Assad, he may be able to get equipment from the Russians. He may be able to get equipment from Iran fairly quickly. And in that case, Israel could find itself very quickly overwhelmed. So again, the possibility of Hezbollah coming full into the war in a very unbridled and across the border manner can only be increased if Syria decides that they have finished with being embarrassed by the Israelis, because at this point, Syria has lost a tremendous amount of credibility. They have the Turks in their northern area, they've lost significant mileage of territory to the Turks, and now they're being seriously challenged and nipped at by the Israelis. And this is was one central fear that I have been talking about since this war began, that and which led me to make a big and very bold statement. And some of you may not like what I'm about to say, and I'm prepared for that. But I think that right now Israel is beginning to be the single largest security threat in the region. And they're doing what I knew that they would do, but I thought they would do after Gaza was over, and that is they'd start turning their attention. They'd finish Gaza, get that eliminated, and then they would feel capable of putting heavy pressure on Hezbollah and Syria and on the West Bank. But I really imagine that they would realize that they are just really taking a bigger bite than what they can swallow by taking on all of these groups at the same time. So they are beginning to take these groups, all these countries, these groups on all at the same time, using this feeling of near invincibility. Hey, we've got Gaza on the run, we've got the Palestinians in the West Bank beaten down. Now Hezbollah is not responding. Let's go fight the Syrians. Um, and this is a grave moment, and a moment capable of grave miscalculation. They could seriously find themselves in a real bind. And I know these are somewhat generic ideas and thoughts, but again, Hezbollah is waiting for a green light to attack, and a Syrian allied combination with them would definitely give them the thumbs up. This might change Egyptian calculus, just thinking long range here. Again, some of this has not been gamed out in my mind totally, but let's just take a theoretical idea and let's base it here in the knowledge that Hamas has been a central problem in the Middle East for a long time. And nobody has really liked Hamas, and everybody in the region has been basically very happy and okay with Hamas being eliminated, especially because they're such a radical group. And if Hamas is planted in these different countries, they could be a destabilizing element there as well. Similar to how the Palestinians were kicked out of Jordan because at first they were welcomed with open arms and great embrace, but when they tried to form the state within the state and then take over the state, they became quite quickly unwelcome and ejected from Jordan. Same thing with Hamas. And Egypt has been fighting Hamas, and especially since Hamas represents a splinter group of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood. So while Israel has been dealing with a regional problem for which they are willing to give lip service to their people but quiet support to Israel, I don't think that that calculus can remain the same if Egypt begins to see Israel just going out and attacking Lebanon and Syria and the Palestinians in the West Bank. Eventually, they have to wonder, hey, is Israel about to turn around? Is it going to come through the Sinai Peninsula like they did in 56? Are they going to come crashing down through and try to challenge us here? The Jordanians might be looking at this and saying, hey, are we next on the chopping block? Are they going to charge across the Jordan River and attack us? And again, you might say, "Oh, James, you're going crazy," but Israel's thinking pattern has changed so significantly that I don't think that, and their behavior patterns have been changing and stirring up these regional conflicts and these fight with their immediate neighbors, many of whom have been quiet and very, very restrained. Again, Syria pounded once a month, maybe 4 times a month, by Israeli Air Force jets, and they occasionally turn on the radar, so they will occasionally shoot some S-400 or S-300 missiles at them, uh, just trying to save face and trying to save some uh, respectability, especially amongst their people. But if Israel looks like it is just pushing everybody around, then it could really spiral out of control. And everybody has worried about that. We greatly worried about it with Iran. But the United States was able to jump in and stand in the middle and tell Iran, hey, basically, it's not worth it. And guess what? We're actually leaning more towards you in this conflict than we are with Israel, because the US right now cannot afford to get into another conflict. We are stretched thin, especially with our multi billion-dollar aid assistance and material assistance to Ukraine. There's just too many conflicts now to properly support. And American politics right now is all aflutter because of recent events, particularly the assassination attempt. Now the case dismissals, Joe Biden's mental capacity. All of these questions begin to be raised as to whether America would like to choose to chew gum and walk at the same time. We may choose to chew gum and walk at the same time, but the question is, which direction will we walk? Will we walk towards them or away from them? And right now, as of this moment, Joe Biden is particularly and almost um, tunnel vision or microscopically focused on Ukraine. That is his pet project. That's his pet war. And so Israel, in some ways, does represent a bit of a sideshow. Now, would that be the same under a Trump presidency? No. I think that Trump would actually favor an Israeli war and would probably concentrate more on that and decrease levels to Ukraine. But there's a lot of time between now and then. And there's a lot of significant fights that could be picked and could be raised. As I said in a prior video, and I was saying that Israel was not in an existential fight, not at this point, because they can still handle the conflict capacity. They're right there. But that does not preclude the ability that they could be pushed that one step beyond and indeed enter into a existential crisis because of having decided to take on too many countries at one time. So our key questions right now really are, how will the Syrians respond? How long can the Syrians respond? How will they treat the assassination of this businessman? This businessman had gotten engaged, according to very open and public news, in very corrupt deals that favored Bashar al-Assad. Basically, Assad lost a conductor on the financial gravy train that he had coming into Syria and in his own pockets. Uh, that kind of thing isn't normally taken too kindly by people who operate on that level. And so I really do believe that Israel is in desperate need of pulling things back because of an over reliance on and an over dependence upon what might happen with the United States. I think that they're counting on way too much and not really focusing on the X factors that could be out there. Again, some of this was stream of consciousness and thinking off the top of my head. A lot of this has also been pulled from different areas. I would appreciate engagement. I love conversations, and I hope that below here you will post your thoughts, your comments. Alberto, I love you. Really appreciate your comments. Uh, John Cote, I really appreciate your comments and engagement here. And everybody else, anybody else, I do encourage you and would like to hear from you about these things. And all right, thank you.